Good morning, good afternoon, or perhaps good evening, wherever you're tuning in today. Thank you for joining the latest Boutique Hotel News webinar. And today we're going to be talking about redefining the guest experience with innovative services and amenities. For those who don't know me, my name is Eloise Hanson. I'm the editor of hospitality and I head up Boutique Hotel News. And we're a global B2B multimedia platform covering the global boutique, lifestyle and luxury hotel industry. And speaking of boutique hotels, I'm actually hosting today's webinar from Losca, London. And some interesting facts, as you can see, this gorgeous library that I'm sat in. This hotel was actually previously a church. And the building dates back to 1856. And the design and architecture of this property absolutely feeds into the brand narrative and the guest experience here at the hotel, which is something that we will likely touch on today. Our series sponsor is Alliants, and we do have Tristan on the call today. And before I hand over to Tristan to introduce himself, we have a short video to play to introduce Alliants. We have popped further details about Alliants into the chat if you would like to learn more. But before, Tristan, why don't I hand straight over to you and you can introduce yourself and the company. So over to you.
Thanks, Eloise. And I wish I had a video to introduce me every time. It's a lot easier to do your introduction once you've had a video. So maybe I'll do that in the future. So hi, I'm Tristan Gadsby. I'm the CEO of Alliants. We're a technology firm that really helps a lot of luxury hotels, but also, and I'll explain hopefully as we go through this, other brands as well as we go from the likes of Four Seasons, Mandarin, Atlantis, so a wide range of brands, all the way down to some very small little motels in the UK. So that's us. We're based in the UK, but are now very international. We're in about 56 different countries around the world. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Tristan. And Jen, I will hand over to you next, please.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Eloise. It's really nice to be here with all of you today. I'm Jen Connell. I lead Marriott's 6 full-service lifestyle brands, including Westin, our collections brands, Autograph and Tribute portfolio, and our startup short-term rental brand, which is more of an apartments brand than an Airbnb competitor, if you will. So definitely more of an entrepreneurial type of bent here in our large company at Marriott. So thanks for having me again, Eloise. Appreciate it.
Oh, very welcome, Jen. And Craig, I'll come to you next, please.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me, Eloise. I'm glad to be on the panel. Craig Bisciotti, co-founder of Common Bond Hotel Collection, which is a new organization that we formed back about 4 years ago. I'm also the COO of Wayland Ventures, which is our development arm and our parent company. So we currently have 2 operating hotels. We have at this point centered on Bourbon Country in Kentucky. So if you can imagine Napa Valley, Sonoma, converting to bourbon, there's a wide range of opportunities here in Kentucky, small boutique hotels, chef-driven restaurants. So our pipeline at this point is 2 to 9 by 2027, which is exciting, and really celebrating the notion of bourbon and how we have guests come not just for 1 or 2 nights, but how do we extend their visit to 3, 4, 5 nights, because we have this collection of opportunities from Bardstown, which is the bourbon capital of the world, to Frankfurt, which is Buffalo Trace and Woodford Reserve, and those types of things. So really excited about our initial entry. Everything's going great, and really looking forward to learn more on the panel today.
Thank you, Craig. And last but not least, Chris, over to you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Chris Atlas here, president of Posey Exchange. We are a brand activations agency. We help you show your clients or attract your clients on what your brand is. We help with engaging with your clients, identifying what those needs are, and helping your brand really grow its presence so that you're reaching everybody around you.
Thank you so much, Chris. And all further details about our panelists have been popped into the chat. I do encourage you to connect and carry on the conversation after we finish today's webinar. A quick overview of how today's webinar is going to run. We're going to spend around 45 minutes in discussion, followed by some time at the end to take any questions from our audience. So those that are tuning in today, if you do have any questions, you could submit these using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screens, and I will get round to asking these towards the end. And this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be automatically sent to everybody that has registered within 2 days' time. Now, before we get started into our main discussion, I always like to flag some context. It helps to sort of set the scene. And Travelverse is a new immersive experience and booking platform due to launch next year, with the aim of providing virtual city tours, digital twins, and immersive training for travel agents. And sticking with tech for a moment, there's a new AI-powered chatbot service that has recently been launched by the Ascot. And Marriott Hotel, which is a Common Bond Hotel Collection property, has recently opened in a former disco ball factory in Kentucky. And I have to say, I really enjoyed writing that story. It was pretty fun. And we'll likely hear from Craig later on how all things disco has actually fed into the design narrative and experience of that property. On the next slide, here are some headlines from other media sources. And esports and gaming seems to be edging ever closer to the hotel sector. The W London Hotel opened its first gaming suite last year, and Rove Hotels in Dubai has also refitted and equipped some of its suites specifically for gamers. I actually spoke to Paul Bridger about that decision, and the revenue that they've been making from those suites is pretty phenomenal. And this summer, Autograph Collection launched a photography installation with 4 photographers in residence at hotels across the globe. We've got Jen on the call here, so I'm trying to flag everything that our panelists have been up to recently. And one thing I would like to flag is sleep tourism, which also seems to be booming at the moment. And some examples of what hotels are introducing include smart beds, sound waves, CBD therapies, sleep concierges, you name it, they're all being offered within hotels. So let's talk about redefining the guest experience with innovative services and amenities. And Jen, I'd like to kick off with yourself, please, as you have quite an overarching view of traveller behaviour across 6 of those brands within Marriott's lifestyle portfolio. So can you provide us with an overview of current guest behaviour and spending trends?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we've seen, and I don't know that this is going to be news to anyone, but is the rise of wellness. The traveler wants to take care of themselves. And this was something that I think was already a trend before COVID, but COVID really allowed people to have the time, or forced them to take the time out of all their busy schedules to take care of themselves. And what a great trend. You know, I love human trends. There's technology trends, and I think those are great. But I think at the end of the day, all technology trends feed back into human trends. You know, how does the individual take care of themselves physically and socially? And in all the ways, mentally, spiritually. So one of the things that's really interesting about this wellness trend is that 72% of global travelers say they're more focused on their self-care, and 68% are seeking these destinations that really allow them to be surrounded by nature and to have more mental clarity. And they're also spending more money. So that's good, right? I mean, we want to give the travelers what they need. These days, travelers are willing to pay for it, as we've all seen. You know, our luxury rates, when you look at, I think Virtuoso just announced they had their highest year revenues ever. mean, that's amazing news for the luxury industry, right? That our guests are seeking out these unique locations and these unique types of offerings, and they're willing to pay more for them. So wellness travelers, we found, spend a lot more than the typical traveler, 35% more typically on travel. So that's a really great stat. I think something else that is really exciting, and this really plays into all of our independent hotels out there, is these travelers are seeking an emotional connection with the hotel, with their destination. They don't want to come to a hotel that's consistent in its offering everywhere they go. Yeah, consistency in service levels is important. Consistency in design quality is important, but they want to have experiences that are very reflective of the destination, reflective of the local service culture, and offering some unique experiences within the actual guest experience. So we've done a lot of different things around autograph collection and tribute portfolio. We've got these threads that hold the collection together from a quality perspective, but we require each of our autograph collection hotels, and we don't have to push hard, they're already great, to offer these individual unique experiences. We call them the mark. You can call them anything you want. They are lots of different touch points in the hotels, but things like in a music-focused hotel, having a recording studio, or in the Montcalm in London, which is in Shoreditch, celebrating the photography history of that area and the artists of that area, actually having a photography studio there where you can develop your film. So things like this are really important. I don't think I'm telling this audience anything they don't know, being luxury hoteliers, being independent hoteliers, but that storytelling aspect of the experience is such an important part. Humans love mystery. We love it. We love to discover things that are not easily discoverable. So let's create property experiences that help these guests solve the mystery of the destination, of the historic aspect of the building. Eloise, speaking of the beautiful former, I think you said church.
Yes.
Yeah, that you're in. I mean, what a gift to be able to work in a hotel environment like that, to be able to celebrate the history of a beautiful beautiful building. And yeah, so I
want to provide an actual example. I used to work in a hotel in Brighton, which is on the south coast of the UK. And this was before QR codes even became like the go-to, right? But this hotel, it's the Grand Hotel, used to have QR codes dotted around the property, and it would encourage our guests to go up and scan the QR code, and it would reveal like a chapter or of a part of its history, because the Grand Hotel has such a fantastic history behind it. It's most famously known for being bombed when Margaret Thatcher was holding her Tory conference next door. So and our guests loved it. It was such a great way for them to actually connect with the hotel, but also what happened to it in the past. And it was such a huge hit. So I'm just echoing or adding to what you've just said there, Jen. May I ask, how do you actually measure the success of guest experiences?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we all have probably guest satisfaction surveys out there, and that's an important and easy probably way to do that. Looking at the actual guest comments that come along in those surveys, having what we call experiential audits. Our lifestyle brands have audits that are basically secret shoppers that come in, and Deloitte does this for us. I mean, you can get the major measurement agencies and companies to do this for you. They come in and they really write how their emotional experience was in the hotel. Not just did you have enough coat hangers in the closet, but did I feel cared for? Did I feel inspired? Did I feel that there were enough unique offerings in the hotel? So we employ those as well. And then, of course, brand health metrics that we do using NPS out there, looking at the number of media impressions our hotels are getting across social and across any of our campaigns. So there's lots of ways to hear the voice of the customers. Probably the most valuable way, though, is to talk to the properties, to talk to the general managers. I mean, these are the people who are really running the business. I can sit here in our corporate office and think I know what someone in Thailand is going through, but I don't. So talking to those individual leaders is an incredible and invaluable way to help us understand how the guest is really reacting to the programming that we've launched out there on a global scale and then individually on a property level.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jen. And let's bring Craig in here, as I know you are opening, launching, operating, developing hotels. Is there anything you would add here? Does this tally with what you're seeing across the Common Bond Hotel collection?
Absolutely. I think this sense of discovery that Jen mentions is a key component of what we strive for, this level of curiosity, particularly in design. So I talk about with the design team, like I want people to be confused for maybe 3 seconds as to where they might be traveling or moving through the space. And then there's these moments of like, oh, okay. And it's drawing you into a further exploration, which is really exciting, but it's a real delicate balance, of course, too, because not everyone's brain works that way. A 3-second confusion could make them walk back on the street, but we're creating, I think, this sense of engagement. And then on the surveys and the technology and the data points and all of those things that Jen mentions are absolute. I probably have a unique opportunity because we are a startup, we're small. I'm sitting in the Marriott hotel right now. I can drive to all of my hotels within a 45-minute drive. So there's an intimacy that I have. So I start my day in Switchboard, our morning, coffee breakfast spot. I sit there, I see, and the hotel desk is right there. So I have the opportunity to talk directly, kind of get a sensibility. And it's also great elements of inspiration for the team and help guiding them into that mode. We ask a lot of questions. We certainly want to create an environment, a vibe where Jen nailed it. It's not the chandelier, it's not the marble floor, it's how did we make you feel, right? How are you leaving here? What are your memories? We're not selling a product, we're selling memories. So really being able to, train team, hire well, create culture, I think are key components. On the measurement of how we're doing, it's also loyalty. Like we're not a big group, right? But our sense of loyalty comes from, again, the intimacy. Our repeat guests in the restaurant, we were very fortunate. Paseo opened June 29th. And I think we have people that have already been here 20 times. So that those elements of bringing themselves back, bringing friends that are coming into town has really, made us be aware of, are we doing well? Yes. Can we always do better? Certainly. So that's been key to us. And also we have this authenticity. We're in a disco ball factory. We're in a 1971 retro motel in Bardstown that's funky and fun. And we've got swim clubs at both of the hotels, right? So we teach and train and inspire the team, because the most engagement that guests have are in those spaces. They're not really in the hotel from a guest room perspective. It's really the engagement at the bar, at the restaurant, at the swim club, at the coffee shop, being able to kind of tease out, how you doing? Everything great? Enjoying yourself? So I think that's kind of where we are with things. And we have the opportunity of that distinctive, product. And people are coming to this area for a purpose. It's bourbon country. It's on their bucket list. They want to go to Beam and Maker's Mark and Heaven Hill and Buffalo Trace, and they want to hit all these places, and we're providing a space that allows them to do those distillery tours. And because we have strong connections with the distillers and the distillery owners, we're able to allow them to linger longer, is our phrase. Like, go there, come back, fire pits, have bourbon, have a snack, go to dinner, and then we'll launch you to one of our next properties. We'll take care of you, we'll drive you, we'll set up your itineraries, etc.
So this is creating an experience both on and off property, effectively, is what you're getting at, which I think is something worth flagging here, that whilst we do obviously like to talk about hotels and their interiors and what we are offering on property, you can look at the whole guest journey, post, pre-stay, during stay. There are so many opportunities here to activate and drive more experiences and effectively revenue and profit. Tristan, I know you work with a lot of independent and boutique hotels. Do you have any examples of properties that have implemented innovative strategies to enhance that guest experience beyond what I might call traditional offerings?
Definitely. I think there are lots of examples, particularly when you look in the luxury space. Just going back to some of the things around though, measuring the experience. Actually, we power a lot of the messaging for our hotels. So we actually see, conversations going on between guests and the properties, across a wide cross section. So more than just, the few percentage points that fill in the satisfaction surveys. You can actually see how they're feeling right there in the moment. You can see the sentiment. You can use, things like technologies to help classify those conversations, so you understand which element of the experience actually is a good experience and which are potentially detractors as well. So, there are lots of things that you can do, and actually some of the most innovative things we see are people using, some of that data to help really improve the experience. But also, the key thing for us, and one of the key things, is having the itinerary. So the itinerary is what can help a hotel really bring alive not only what's on property, but also what exists around, like Bourbon Country. It is on my bucket list, so I will be coming, Craig. So please save a space for me. But it's, that itinerary can help you really curate the experience for those individuals. And I think, if you look at the luxury space, it is around, maybe some exclusive access or, some things that you might not be able to do otherwise. So that, getting the bourbon maker to take you around, and give you the tour and things like that. So we see lots of examples where people are creating those experiences. And I think, I'm occasionally going to wear my technology hat today to try and sort of bring it back. But I think, a lot of people are using AI now to do things like give me an itinerary in destination X, which is great. But unfortunately, that's all that's doing is kind of reinforcing what we already know. And I think that's where the human touch needs to come back in and be alongside the technology, so that actually you can provide these unique experiences and bring all of that together. So I think whilst technology is, helps in some of these areas, actually, it doesn't really help. It doesn't help with the authenticity of the property. It doesn't really help with the authenticity of the experience. So, you have to combine these things to make it work. Taking it down a sort of level though, I think it's not just in the luxury properties. I think you can do things at the budget end of the market as well. And we work with a brand in the UK called Molly's, which is a very small independent brand created by the founders of Soho House, so Nick Jones and those guys. So very much, looking at that budget end of the market, but they've tried to put technology at the heart of their experience, so it just makes everything easy and reduces the burden on the staff. So as an example, if you're encouraged to download the app, which they have more app downloads than any other brand we work with by a factor of about 4 or 5. The guests automatically link to the Wi-Fi. They automatically link to the TV, so there's no messing around trying to authenticate your Netflix. There's obviously digital keys and all the things you expect today, but also even things like charging your car. So you can actually book a charging slot and start the charger when you arrive, from the app. But what that's done though, actually, and sort of going back to this sort of human element, is it's enabled them to completely change the spaces, the common spaces that they have. So where they had, originally a check-in area, actually they realized no one needs check-in really anymore. All they're doing actually is conversing with the guests and facilitating the experience. So that check-in area has been reformatted in their early properties to actually being a combined bar and check-in area, so that actually it becomes the real hub of the property itself. And I think that's a great example of where, actually the experience, the on-property experience in this case, can be, really changed by, things like technology and thinking beyond, what the conventions are, today.
I've certainly seen some great examples of how lobbies and other spaces are being maximized, which brings me so beautifully onto my next question to Chris. And I'd like to learn from yourself, Chris, how hotels are engaging with partners to curate and activate those underutilized spaces whilst on property.
So that's a great one. And I've been fortunate to really fly literally across the world to help hotels and, build their brand, but utilizing these spaces, locking arms with their partners. And because I get to lock arms with different partners around the globe, I'm able to kind of connect the hotels with their local audience. So some of the things hotels are doing is like what's called a styled shoot. Pictures speak 1,000 words. We've heard that plenty of times. Anytime a guest is looking for anything that's involving a hotel or place to stay, things to do, they run to the pictures of that. So we've got some of our clients, they are working to do styled shoots. So essentially that means is they're styling the different areas of their property and showing what these functions could look like to their guests. They're showing guests how, what their experience would look like being there. But they're partnering with local professionals in the industry, like myself, a brand activations agency, to come in and do activate those spaces, style those spaces. Other things that they are doing are hosting local events. It's really important to tie in the local community. Wherever the property is located, typically the community is getting visitors. And who better to talk about the property than the neighborhood or the community you're within? So local events like local markets, one-off shows, workshops. One of my favorite ones is our bath bomb workshop. We typically go in, we do like a full-on workshop. People like to do cool things and they like to get messy, especially when they don't have to clean up the mess. So, and it's the same thing with activating the space. People want something that they don't see everywhere, right? And brands want to create that wow factor. So partnering with local and international companies to kind of come in, bring in that fresh mind to activate the space, get different perspectives, really helps, curate and utilize those areas of improvement.
We saw during the pandemic that there were a lot of underutilized conference and meeting spaces, and often what happened is they would turn to their local yoga studio or an activity partner to host on property activities. And I've also seen one, it might have been a Shangri-La hotel, but don't quote me on that one, where they changed their lobby into a sort of like food fair / food truck, and they had 6 different trucks or installations, I suppose, where you could go and get tea in one and your dessert in the other, and then a pastry at another place. And it was a great way. I think food is quite a big driver for a lot of people traveling, or drink if you're that way inclined. And on that note, Craig, where else are the opportunities for hoteliers to deliver greater ROI on guest experiences?
Yeah, I love what Chris was talking about with activations. I mean, we commit to hiring an activations manager on property for exactly those purposes, because if you give people a reason to come, they will most likely, maybe not in the amounts that you want them to initially, but if you create, regular events, sustainable events, the yoga you mentioned, we do yoga at the pool. We're not doing it today because it's a little chilly, but during season, we'll do yoga, and we partner with the studio. We do a HIIT class. We partner with Shred, that's just down the street. We partner with an aesthetics group that will come and do IV drips at the pool and B12 shots on Saturdays, because maybe everyone did a little too much discoing on Friday. Things like that just create engagement, and the local piece, like, amplify that a million times. When we look at our restaurants, our food and beverage, We build for the locals, hands down. We don't even consider, I shouldn't say we don't consider, but we believe that if the locals love it, the visitors will flock. And, you know, that's proven to be the case because, you know, for us in Kentucky, we do have seasonality. We're not in New York, we're not in LA, but we have a real dedication locally to food and beverage, and that tends to be the entertainment piece in Louisville and the surrounding areas. That ROI, you know, like when you mentioned ROI, you know, many of the people I talked with, like, wow, you're with benefits and all the things, you're spending $250,000 on the salary and the activations and all these things. I'm like, yeah, that's right. Because people, when they're arriving from out of town, if they're here 2 or 3 days, they want something to do. And, you know, we mentioned bourbon, but we're not just bourbon. And the wellness, back to what Jen was, you know, mentioning, the yoga at the pool has been a huge hit. We do readings, card readings in Switchboard, which is our, you know, our entry bar lobby, as we were talking about. We just started doing Reiki sessions that you can coordinate as far as energy source work in your room. So having those calendar events, having those things, what's happening this week, and creating it more like a local social club environment, I think is really helpful, because guests who are visiting can just kind of slip into that and participate. And, you know, a lot of places don't do that, so it's unique and special. We're surrounded by parks here too. Olmsted, who did Central Park in New York, was brought here years ago. We have, I want to say, 12 Olmsted parks within walking distance. So Cherokee Park is right behind us. So the idea, like on brunch, we have this wonderful outdoor spaces, and we optimize those. You know, on a particular Sunday, I think it's the third Sunday of every month, bring your dog to the outdoor paseo space, have some champagne, some snacks for brunch, and then go for a walk in Cherokee Park. It's like a 2-mile loop. Drop your dogs off and then come back and have a full brunch. So those types of things are fun, and I'm looking forward to how those things might play, you know, in the future.
I'd like to bring the conversation back to service, because we've talked a lot about amenities and sort of providing some kind of activity or something to do, but I do think, and I think Tristan was the one to really kind of touch on the human element, and I suppose the emotional intelligence of technology. But Craig, could you sort of reiterate what the value of service is within this conversation?
Yeah, I mean, really, that's the business we're all in here, right? Service has always been and will always be the key to sustainable hospitality. That's what it's about. That's what we remember. We can maybe look away from things that didn't thrill us, but if there's kindness, generosity of spirit, a real care and concern for what people are doing, and there's an enthusiasm, not because they're told they have to do this, but they genuinely love doing it. So yes, service, hiring really hard, which has been difficult in this environment, particularly as I look to smaller towns. You know, if I'm in Bardstown, Kentucky, I'm in Elizabethtown, these small it's really hard to find expertise and talent. So a large piece of what we do as a culture is we believe in education and training, and, you know, come in, we'll show you all these things, we'll teach you, but, you know, your smile from the heart has to be very evident when we look at those things. The other thing, again, is most of the members on my team I've worked with for 15 years. So although we're a startup, you know, I was with 21C Museum Hotels in the early days when that all started. So when I moved back to Kentucky to do this particular work from New York, I just called all my old friends and I said, "Do you want to have fun again?" So not that they weren't having fun, but there's this, you know, there's this element of startup and fun and energy and excitement. So my team is very in sync with what that type of service is. And they really love it, and they're really good teachers. So, you know, if we can take team members to places that they've never been or wouldn't go on their own, and help them, you know, make a career out of this, that they maybe thought that was possible. And we know in this business, you can be, you know, a bell person one day and the GM, you know, a few years later, which is fabulous.
Well, I certainly look forward to watching you grow, Craig, with your fun team members around you. I do wonder what's next. You've already hit a disco ball factory, so I am curious to see what's coming down the line.
There's a lot of good stuff.
Well, I think Craig's just taken, you know, his probably from bucket list to next on deck, right? So with the parks and everything else going on, so can't wait to see it in person.
Thank you. You're welcome anytime.
Tristan, let's stick with you for a moment here. I am going to ask you to really put your sort of tech hat on now, and we're going to look at data, because I understand that I can't remember who mentioned loyalty programs. It might have been Jen or Craig actually, but hoteliers are sat on vast amounts of data here, and I've heard. I was at a conference or an event maybe a month or so ago. It was a prop tech event, and somebody mentioned that it's one thing to start saying, oh, I'm going to collect the data, but when you have pools and pools and pools of data, you're suddenly overwhelmed with which is the right data set to start analyzing. So with that in mind, Tristan, what do you think is the right, and I put that in quotation marks, right data for hoteliers to be sourcing and analyzing to enhance their guest engagement?
So I think I'd start by saying there's no real wrong data. I think, you know, it can all be valuable if it's treated in the right way, but I think you have to go back to what you're trying to achieve. So, and I think actually, you know, Craig, you made an absolutely fantastic point. When you're looking at the customer base of a typical property, it's not just people staying with you. It's people that come into the restaurant. It's people that come in and use those common spaces. So we always talk about the stay, but actually that's the wrong starting point. Actually, you need to learn about your customers and get data around your customers. So, you know, that will help you drive things like increased customer spend, you know, increase spend during a stay if they are staying, and then increase satisfaction. And as a result of that, then repeat business, and how you really then turn it into dollars, which is getting them to come back, spread it via word of mouth to make your marketing dollars go even further, you know, all those sorts of things. So I think you need to look at, first of all, what you're trying to achieve. It's then really about how you sort of connect some of that data. So, you know, there are lots and lots. The biggest problem we see with data in hotels is the silos. So you have lots of data buried within the property management system. You have another great stack of data buried within the table management system. You then have another great source of information, and Jennifer mentioned this earlier, you know, that's buried in the guest satisfaction results. But very, very rarely is that connected in a way that you can actually then action it. And I think that's the real difference. I mean, we spend forever doing recency, frequency, monetary analysis, you know, on all of that data. And actually, that doesn't really help you action it and turn it into a better experience. So we really think about things in a slightly different way. We don't talk about, for example, we don't talk about the rate code that they booked on or their particular loyalty status. We actually talk about the combination at Alliants between profile, preferences, and then context, you know, of that data and that person. So, you know, whether they've checked in on a corporate rate code, on a group rate, for example, but actually they're looking for those, you know, individual experiences, you know, to experience the destination they've come to whilst they're at their conference, you know, and you have to look at what people are actually looking for. And you can see that within the data. You can see that on past itineraries that people have booked on. And then you can use the context. So if you understand what they're doing during that stay, you understand that they booked a restaurant, or in fact, in many cases, more importantly, haven't booked a restaurant, you can help tailor that experience and make it a much more engaging experience for those guests. And yes, you can go into, you know, reams of detail about what preferred food and all those kinds of things, but actually you have to start with the basics and look at how you turn that data into something you can action. I think, you know, when you look at some of the top brands and, you know, a lot of the work we do with brands like Four Seasons, it's not actually, so we do a lot of data work with them, but it's more about turning it into how it's actioned. You know, they have reams of data, but actually it's the nuggets that really matter. So here's someone arriving with you that's coming in from the airport. They haven't booked transportation. They normally would have done it 3 days in advance. Proactively reach out to them and ask them if they'd like you to arrange transport. So those are the sorts of things that you can start to do, you know, if you get the right data and the context put together, so that you really understand and can help them, you know, throughout that journey. I think, Eloise, you mentioned about, you know, it is about the whole journey. You know, a customer, you know, whose experience doesn't start the moment they check in. It starts way before that. It starts actually when they're looking, you know, at where they might go, how they go from bucket list to next on deck, you know, how they then, you know, decide what they might want to do with you once they've got over the initial sticker shock of the, you know, the price of the stay. They then, you know, actually forget that and then start to think about, well, actually, I'm going to Kentucky. What else can I do? You know, here are all the great things that I might want to engage with. So it really is bringing, I think, all of those, you know, different things together.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Tristan. Jen, building on from that, and I'm going to merge this with a question from the audience. You mentioned that you're seeing a big uptick in wellness and how travelers are leaning towards wellness. Are you tracking any data around wellness tastes and preferences to help drive certain experiences? Is that a sort of part of your data set that you're actively looking at it, or are you seeing any trends within the space?
Yeah, actually, that's a great question. Thanks for combining those, because Westin is our wellness brand for Marriott. So we have about 250 hotels across the globe. The mission of Westin is to empower our guests to stay with us to keep their wellness routines while they're gone, because it's disruptive, right? When we're on planes, we're drinking at the distilleries. You know, how do we make sure that we provide programming that helps those hotels? So when we had, before the pandemic, a gear lending program with Westin, where you could come, and if you forgot to bring your workout clothes or you just didn't want to pack them, you could rent or utilize an entire set of clothing to support, or a kit if you're in England, that could support your workout habits. And so you could go for a run or you could work out in the gym. We found that after the pandemic, people were not really willing to share clothing, even if it had been washed, and shoes and things like that. And so we did some studies as to what we thought the most important wellness trends were we should capitalize on with Westin. So we morphed and evolved gear lending to be more of a recovery type of experience. So we partnered with Hyperice and Bala, but specifically on the recovery side, Hyperice, to create gear lending kits that were recovery focused. So you could go to the front desk or ask to be delivered a recovery kit that includes a massage gun, a massage ball, bands, and things to help you stretch. So that is really also more inclusive, because not everybody's a runner, not everybody's going to go to the gym and needs, you know, the short shorts that you might share with someone else. You want something that is going to help you when you go to Disney or when you're walking all day in the airports. So recovery is universal. Everybody needs that kind of thing. So that's the kind of analysis that we've been doing as we've looked at the trends for wellness over time. And it's not just in our Move Well pillar in Westin. We have 6 pillars. I won't walk you through all of them, but the 3 foundational ones are Move Well, Sleep Well, and Eat Well. So how do we think about the sleep experience in a more forward-looking way? The Westin Heavenly Bed changed the way we think about sleep and bedding in the entire industry in 1999. You know, it's 2023. What are we doing now? So we really are looking at these trends on a global level to evolve the program for Westin. Mm-hmm. And that translates to all of our brands, of course.
Speaking of sort of the cross portfolio view again, we've touched on today about the importance of local and that sense of place. And Jen, how are you blending that with the global brand DNA that you are, you know, you've got such an overarching view, but at the same time, so specific when you come with your certain brands to certain markets? So how are you balancing the two?
That is the thing that keeps me up every night. How do you scale really great, authentic experiences? It's a tough nut to crack. We used to do, you know, if you think about Marriott and all of the big brands in history, consistency. The bed that you had, or the artwork, or the Marriott burger that you ate in one hotel was the same one you ate, you know, between New York and Tokyo. And customers' tastes have changed, as we've discussed, but now we think of it more as freedom within a framework. How do you put forth the overarching principles of the brand, its DNA, as you said, and have that be the inspiration? I mean, every brand, Four Seasons has the same problem. Ritz-Carlton has the same problem. Moxie has the same problem, right? So how do you solve this by providing the freedom, giving people simple rules? This is what our brand stands for. Yes, we've got these great partnerships at a global level, like the partnership with Hyperice and the Heavenly Bed and these other programs. But how do you then, in your own hotel, customize your food menu? How do you create a concept, an F&B concept that is true to the brand, but also feels like it's a local experience? And that's great. Local ingredients are sustainable. Local ingredients provide authentic food and beverage experiences. So that's from a food and beverage perspective, kind of the way we think about it. From an experiences perspective, you know, it's easier with brands like Autograph Collection and Tribute Portfolio, because we say your brand is not Autograph Collection, your brand is Hotel Distill, your brand is the Algonquin. We are your platform. But how do I tell the customer which collections brand is right for them? Right. So each of them has a specific quality level range, so to speak, because you're not going to put the Austin Motel in the same category you put the Plaza, right? You need to have some type of brand structure that helps the customer decide, I want a very approachable experience, and this is why I would choose Tribute Portfolio, kind of maybe a little funky, a little give me permission to do something out of the ordinary, or I want a very elegant storytelling experience, so I'll choose Autograph Collection. So we have brand personalities to some degree, and then quality level platforms to some degree to separate those different brands. And then we allow those hotels to really create their experience on property. There is nothing at one Autograph Collection property that's required at another besides a plaque on the door and your mark. So your specific individual experience that you put forth to the guest.
We've had a question come in from the audience again, aimed at you, Jen, about how you think Autograph distinguishes itself from other boutique brands, but you've, in a roundabout way, kind of answered it by saying Autograph isn't a brand to begin with. The brand is actually the individual hotel. So maybe that needs to be rephrased to a collection brand. How does Autograph distinguish itself from other collection brands? Please.
So we have brand pillars, just like any brand would have. However, they're more philosophical in nature than directive or prescriptive. So we think about how we bring craft to life. We think about a hotel having a vision and a story. We think of hotels having a connection or a sense of the locality, kind of being a part of the fabric of the locality. So we call those curatorial principles, because those are the things that we look at when we are choosing whether an existing hotel belongs in Autograph Collection or not. We say, does it answer those questions? Does it have a vision and a story? Does it bring forth craft? And does it feel like it's local, kind of part of the local fabric? Have a sense of place, if you will. So our aim is that when you stand in an Autograph Collection, all those things will be a yes. There are many wonderful, beautiful independent hotels that are not part of a collection. But the great thing about Autograph Collection is you can also have your loyalty, your Marriott Bonvoy points as well. So you're coming in, you've got a distribution channel, you go to Marriott.com or the Bonvoy app, and you can book an Autograph Collection hotel anywhere in the world, and you're going to get a yes to those questions, right? And you're also going to get rewarded from the loyalty platform. And you can then take those points and use them at a Ritz-Carlton for your honeymoon, or at a Moxie for your getaway with your younger team. So that's, I think I'd say those are probably the biggest value proposition answers for Autograph Collection.
Thank you, Jen. Chris, I can see we're about 10 minutes to 3, and I've got a final question that I want to ask all of you. But before I do that, Chris, I would just like to ask you what the added value is of brand activations for hoteliers. And we've seen some examples. A good example or a good description could maybe be like a try before you buy. It gives guests an opportunity to actually engage with brands that they could maybe buy try before they actually buy it. And you almost create a memory that is then associated with that hotel or said brand. But in your own words, Chris, what is the value of brand activations?
So as Jen just said, brand activations, they tell a story. It's important for your clients, your guests to understand what your story is, because do they mesh with that story? Is it a story that they want to be a part of? As human beings, we all want to be a part of something. Whether it's our stay at a hotel or the newest restaurant that opened in town, or the festival that's happening in town. Your guests want to be a part of something. The value of having brand activations, it allows you to identify, one, who you are, two, who your audience is. If you're just throwing events and your audience, you're not attracting them, it's pointless, right? Because activations, they do cost money. It is an investment. But aside from attracting people, it builds credibility. They build trustworthiness. Is this somewhere I want to go to sleep and know that once my door is locked, am I good, right? Trustworthiness, is the food going to always be great? Is the experience always going to be great? There's a reason, the Ritz-Carlton has its name and the Edition has their names, and these brands, they carry themselves in a manner that people expect. And with brand activations, it really allows the brand to show who they are, but also attract that audience, to let the audience know this is who we are and this is where you belong. So it kind of goes back to what Jen was saying with like the autograph collection, things like that. It's important for people to know who the local hotel is. The trust is already there when they have the name of the Marriott there. But what is that property doing to curate that experience for their clientele or their guests? So sorry, I just blanked out there. So like one of the things, it helps increase traffic. It helps increase revenue, because as people are coming in to check out the newest activation that's there for a limited time, there's still revenue coming into the hotel. People will most of the time stop for a drink. People will most of the time stop for a snack, because what fuels us as human beings? Food and drinks. So, as far as where that value goes, it definitely helps with foot traffic, identifying who you are. Credibility is a huge factor there, and trustworthiness. I mean, in our world, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. And is that brand going to be a brand that they know, like, and trust? So it's important to engage and create that bond.
On the cultural programming side of this conversation, which you can bring in a brand activation company or not, depending on what's happening on property, if you've got the person internally, you could argue that the younger travelers and the younger demographics are now aligning their values with the values of that brand and who that brand, hotel brand, then partners with. So you might see hoteliers being very conscious, maybe moving forwards, as to who they partner with and what kind of brand activations they bring in. Because as you've mentioned, Chris, that whole trust and credibility and the whole reputational piece, I think, is only going to be amplified moving forwards. I want to ask you all the same question in turn before we close off today. And this is a piece of advice. This is your nugget of advice for all hoteliers that are tuning in today. What can hoteliers act on to ensure that their services and amenities are driving repeat business and positive reviews. So, Tristan, let's start with you.
Oh, it's tough. So I will put the slight technology spin on this, but as I've talked about, it obviously isn't just about the technology. I just know that's my role here. So the first thing I'd say, isn't specifically about that. It's about better communication. So better communication with your customers. For example, having a messaging solution that you can talk to your guests on about the services and amenities that you have. And we find that actually having those solutions in place, you can lift customer satisfaction by about 10%, just by making yourself available on the channel they want to talk to you on, but also in the language of their choice. So we have to remember the international guests. So on our messaging platform, about 11% of all messages get translated. That means you've got 2 different nationalities talking to each other. And that is a big part of really making sure that you can articulate and tell people what you have to offer, in the right way. So first, I would say, is better communication. The second is understand the context of every guest. And every guest, I mean every guest, not just the primary guest. I think we far too often fall into the trap of presuming that the primary guest is what everything is about. But as we well know, particularly when we travel in a couple, you often want different things. So having an itinerary for each one of those so that you can tailor up the experience for each one's preferences is really, really important. So, for me, I like playing golf or whatever. I'm not particularly a massage person, but my partner is. So making sure that you really do have an itinerary and understand the context of each guest. That way you can make sure, your experiences match what they're coming to see you for, and they get the most from each trip that they possibly can. So that's probably what I'd say, and particularly where technology can sort of help in both of those areas as well.
Craig, what do you think? What would be your advice?
I would say be very market driven, do the work to understand what's missing in your market, decide whatever you are going to do it extremely well and consistently. For us, again, it's that spark of sense of discovery and curiosity. I guess we'll do the heavy lifting really for us, and they have, right? They come, they have a great experience. Their Instagram, their posts, their YouTubes are really helping us in a way that we don't have to do a lot of advertising in that space. So that's wonderful. And I think, let's monetize every space. We're not doing Reiki and hit at the pool because, oh, it sounds cute. We're doing it because there's monetization value. And like Chris was saying, this once they stay after the champagne, let's have brunch, let's come back for dinner. And the last piece, I would just say hire and train well and build a culture of truth and trust. Our employment levels are dire. Our ability to keep and retain talent is challenging. It's probably not going to get any better. But be authentic, not just for your guests, but also for your team members.
Mm-hmm. Jen, what would you be your advice to hoteliers to make sure that their services and amenities are driving that repeat business and positive reviews?
Yeah, I'm going to build on what Craig just said, because I think creating a purpose for your team is probably the most important thing you could do right away. Get your brand book out, take a look at it, determine whether you still believe it. And if you do, make sure all your team understand it and they're passionate about it. And they know why you're doing every single thing you're doing. Because if they don't believe in it, it's not going to come across to the guests the way that you want it to. So that purpose is such an important thing. That also helps you retain talent, helps your talent be happier at work. Your team is the tip of the spear. You, as a leader, have the responsibility and the privilege of giving them a place of work that is meaningful. And if you can do that for your team, your guest is going to see it. Even if you still need to tweak your experiences and your service and you're like, oh my God, I want to add all these things and it's going to take so much time, you're going to make an immediate impact. by doing that, giving your team purpose.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Jen. And Chris, what would be your advice?
So understand, I've kind of led with understanding who you are. I think you need to understand who you are in order to present that to your staff. Your staff needs to understand who you are, because as leaders in a lot of these organizations, if your staff is not happy, your guests won't be. The guest experience will be impacted by that. So I do think that it starts with you as the leader in these organizations, and creating the culture that you want to see across the board.
Mm-hmm.
It also goes with, you can make things pretty, you can make things very appealing, but it starts with service. As somebody who's big in the service world, it starts there. Technology is also great because it helps you understand what people are doing. There's plenty of systems in place right now that shows what people are doing while they're on property. So you can definitely understand what your kind of what your clients need or what that need is. But it really starts with you, curating that that brand, who you are, what do you stand for, and other people want to be a part of it too.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Thank you to Jen.
Yes.
Thank you, Tristan, and thank you to Craig. We have come to our hour on this webinar. I've just got some closing slides to run through very quickly. We are going to keep this webinar open for an extra 2 minutes at the end, as this will allow our audience members to follow up on any of the links that we have popped into the chat. I know there was one question that we weren't able to get through today. So all the LinkedIn profiles of our speakers have been into the chat. Please do connect. I just want to flag my next webinar, and this is actually being hosted in partnership with Guestline, and this is called Elevating the Guest Experience in the Hotel Lobby of Tomorrow. We actually talked about activating hotel lobbies in this conversation, so we'd love to see you there. Please do register. The link has been popped into the chat. And I would also like to flag our first event back in the new year, Recharge, is being held in Belfast on the 22nd and 23rd of January. And talking about the guest experience, this event, it moves to a different European city each time and to a different host venue. And we're actually hosting this in-person event at the Net Zero Carbon Hotel Room 2, which opened just in October. So we would love to see you there. Tickets can be purchased on the link that's in the chat. And if you're interested in working with us, either at our in-person events or our digital events like this webinar, please do get in touch with my colleagues, Rav and Piers. Their details are up on your screens. So once again, thank you to our speakers. Particular thank you to Alliants for sponsoring our webinar series. I've really enjoyed our conversation today, so much so that we've actually overrun. So I think that's a very good sign. But once again, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your days, and I will see you all very soon. Take care.